Kohler is a very veteran-friendly organization.
And I feel like Cavs gets us a little bit of that, like that sense of purpose. Sometimes you're gonna swing and miss the first chance, and I did. You gotta network, you gotta talk to people. You can't transition by yourself.
And you don't know what you don't know. When I finally came to Kohler, it felt like home. It felt like working for the military again. I didn't realize how much I needed something like this in my life.
One thing is prevalent. Military veterans struggle when transitioning back into the civilian world. But even when they land a successful career, some still struggle. There's a lack of camaraderie and purpose. Recently, I caught up with Kohler Company. Kohler employs over 40,000 people worldwide. Most companies this big have employee resource groups, or ERGs for short. Today, you're going to learn about ERGs and the importance of having them within your company. Kohler has several employee resource groups within its company, but today we focus on the Kohler Alliance of Veterans and Supporters. I'm joined by two Kohler military veteran employees, Andrea Havlik and Dan Greaser. Here's their journey back into corporate America and what they're doing to build a strong culture for veterans within Kohler. By the way, if you get value from this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Let's go. So give us a high-level overview of who is Andrea and who is Dan?
Well, I've been with Kohler for 7 years now. I'm currently the sales executive for weddings. So anyone that wants to book a wedding on the resort, I do that for them. I was in the Air Force for 7 years total, active duty for 5, 2 enlisted.
I'm Dan Greaser. Been in Kohler a little over 2.5 years. I'm currently the supervisor of maintenance stores. My team does orders all of the maintenance parts and material and PPE for the campus, including the purchase orders for all the material, which is what I did in the military. I was a captain of logistics. My first job in the Army Reserves, I did 4 years Army Reserves and 7 years active duty, 1 deployment to Afghanistan. My first job in the Army was managing a small parts cage, like just a little tiny, like a walk-in closet parts cage. And I just do that on a much larger scale, so it's kind of full circle.
So tell us a little about what we have here today.
I wanted to really highlight Kohler's contributions to the military because they really have, first and foremost, we're celebrating our 150-year anniversary this year, and all across the resort you could see different artifacts, different things in our Kohler Design Center with our Kohler archives on just how they've supported the military. This is a picture of Herbert Kohler Sr. So he would be our current chairman's grandfather who served in the Army. And then also, this is a nice picture of during World War II, Kohler had a lot of contributions to the war efforts, and they were awarded the Army-Navy flag 2 separate times.
So I know that the brass building was expanded by almost double for to produce brass shells. In fact, we still have the original molds in the basement of the cast iron foundry where they used to pour the molds for the shells.
That's phenomenal. Yeah. Great story.
And we're really excited because Kohler's also building a memorial tribute this year. We hope to dedicate it, I'm sure, not we hope, it will be dedicated around Veterans Day this year. And we're extremely excited about that because it really shows their support of the military community, their support of everything that was done in the past for veterans and the military as well.
Absolutely. And I've had the pleasure of being part of events that Kohler had supported, and recently on one of their golf courses. It was a great time, and what Kohler does for the community, I can honestly say that is very well appreciated. So tell us about Cavs. What is Cavs and what's the purpose of it?
Cavs was developed in 2018 when this BRG, along with a handful of other ones, were created. So the purpose of the BRGs within Kohler Company is to overall help with diversity, bring more diversity awareness to both the associates and the community. The purpose is also to help with community involvement, strategic volunteer initiatives, cultural awareness, just for everyone to be a part of. Let's say, right now in June, our BRG called Black Catalyst has had some Juneteenth celebrations, and that's open for everyone. It's not just for people that are in that BRG. Just like how when we throw something as part of Cavs, it is open for everyone. So I really appreciate it that way, that people can find their niche. You can certainly be involved in multiple BRGs. There are multiple people involved in multiple BRGs, just depending on where their heart lies and where they want to really help the community.
Did you want to add anything?
Well, I think more than that, it's also about community, like building a community, helping people understand Kohler and get into Kohler. I mean, I was kind of joined the BRG almost from day one I was introduced. So it's kind of getting in the Kohler, learning Kohler, and having a group, and also that networking and realizing, you know, organizations this large is really helpful.
Absolutely. And networking, that's a huge thing in any company that you work with or in sales and in other fields. But what does CAVS or any ERG mean for an organization, for the company culture? Like, what impact does that have?
It has a great impact if you take advantage of it. Networking is huge for an individual. It's huge for us as our own BRG. As an individual, you can take advantage of just within our BRG, you know, I get to meet people like Dan, I get to meet people that work in other divisions that I would have never met before. And maybe I don't have interest in getting a job in that division, but it's very helpful to know people, A, just on a personal level, and B, anyone want, you know, just to further your career and making contacts. Through our BRG, we certainly have made it a priority to network with other veteran organizations, especially this year in the greater Milwaukee area, and trying to do that with our different remote associates as well.
Who does CAVS support, and what kind of goals do you guys set for your CAVS organization?
Goals for a volunteer organization can be a fun thing to set. It depends on who's in the organization. We certainly have goals of just recruitment and retention. That's very important. Recruitment both into the BRG and recruitment like what Dan does with our recruiting committee, and he can highlight that more later. That's very important for us to just let people know that Kohler is a very veteran-friendly organization. It's a BRG-friendly organization overall. So that's certainly a goal. Other goals are what I'd like to say kind of fun goals. I think the last 2 years I've really wanted us to just get out of our comfort zone and do something different, which we did. We started off last year with a small golf fundraiser that was held just at our par 3 course at Black Wolf Run. And then this year we did our large fundraiser, which you were a part of as well, also at Black Wolf Run, but went on one of our 18-hole courses. And so that was certainly a huge goal. And it's a monetary goal. It helps that through that monetary goal, we help other people, which is something that is very important to veterans, I believe. I think that it's just a group of people that really want to help other veterans and give back.
I think that getting out, you know, that sense of in the military, we always had a purpose. This is what I'm doing, the greater good. And I feel like CAVS gets us a little bit of that, like that sense of purpose. We talked about community, but really that purpose of, you know, what do I do? Well, this is one way to give back. And I think veterans, that's really a key thing, is we want to give back. That's why we served, is give back to our country. This is one small way we can do that.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And being veterans, you know, one of the biggest questions, we were talking before the show, that transition is one of the toughest things that a veteran faces. It's scary. It's the unknown. You're walking into the unknown without a weapon. You know, you don't really know what to do, who to talk to, or anything like that. But kind of share, Dan, we'll start with you this time, but share a little bit about your transition and how you came to find your purpose after you got out.
So I got out August 21st, 2017 from Joint Base Lewis McChord, and I moved to Idaho. I was recruited from a headhunter and moved there. I did have support. My wife was a former Air Force that got out before me, so she does experience in a transition. That was huge. But I admit those first couple of years were kind of rough. I was in an organization that didn't fit me, and my ethos and, you know, didn't really fit the organization. Wasn't a great fit. But I kind of learned what type of organization, what I didn't want to do. And I think that's key, is we all veterans want to find what we want to do. Sometimes you're going to swing and miss the first chance, and I did. I wouldn't do that job, and I wouldn't work for that company again, but that's okay. But now, you know, doing what I do now is very similar to what I did in the military. Those same skills are very transferable, and I found my niche, and this is what I want to do. So I think the key thing is to first not panic and kind of seek out maybe different opportunities and And when I see some resumes from a recruiting team, we see some resumes and I see people, it seems like I'd say shotgun blasting experience and all these different certs and all this stuff. And it looks like they're trying to figure out what they want to do. They want, I'm a project manager, manufacturing side, engineer, like, you can kind of see from a resume that person doesn't know what they want to do. So, and I think there's some finding and searching what it is. And I think networking, I had some really good conversation that I was getting out. I reached out on LinkedIn to a couple veterans, and they sat down with me, directors of other companies, and they sat down with me and they talked, and it's like, if I had your experience, this is what I would do. And I thought I wanted to go one direction, and there's like, you don't want to do that. So I had some just cold call out of the blue. Hey, can you meet with me and talk to me for a half hour? One guy did. We had breakfast, and he just gave me an hour and a half of his time of mentoring me. And I can't, those people, they know who they are. That was huge of me to kind of set me on the right path.
That's awesome. Can you give a little bit of feedback on that too? Because a lot of veterans, I feel like, do that. They spray and pray with their resume. What advice would you have for a vet that's in those shoes?
I think finding out, getting some feedback of people, like if you want to go in an industry, talk to a veteran in that area. Do LinkedIn search veteran in the company you want to do in the industry. Find someone, reach out and say, and I think most of us are receptive. We will say, okay, unless have someone look over your resume that's in the field. I want to do this. And they can either talk you in or they can talk you out of it. But you're not going to get it right. And I think I've seen some stats where, the majority of people I know, they'll jump careers or jump job positions in the first 18 months. So it's a high turnover rate. That 18 months is you're trying to figure out what you want to do. But you got to network. You got to talk to people. I was involved in a couple of different organizations that really helped me, that kind of give me on. But you gotta ask the questions. And I think that's hard for veterans, is to reach out and ask for help. Because we're can do it people. I can do this on my own. You can't transition by yourself.
Absolutely.
You cannot transition by yourself. You need some help.
That's great advice. I mean, I totally agree with that. I mean, and veterans want to help other veterans, right? You're proving it right now inside your own organization. How about you, Andrea?
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny how you forget the pain. I got out of the Air Force back in 2006. And after that, I went and worked for a couple of different small companies. And you don't know what you don't know. That was living down south. When I moved back up to Wisconsin, I started wanting to work for a bigger company. And I just kept getting the door slammed in my face. I'm like, what is wrong? Like, what? I have all this experience. Like, this should mean something, And finally, someone in the interview process just told me, like, hey, I don't understand your resume, And it was just a light bulb moment, because to me it was clear as day what my experience was. But most people, especially in Wisconsin, there aren't many bases around here. Most people don't know what those things mean, and a lot of people don't have military families. So it makes it that much more important to ask someone for help with your resume and things like that, and what's normal, even pay ranges, what's normal. Am I asking too little? Because obviously the manager that's hiring you, they're not going to pay you more than you're asking. Yep. So things like that are very important. Yeah, that was one thing. When I finally came to Kohler and working for a large company again, it felt like home. It felt like working for the military again, because we are so large, there are so many processes and procedures. In working in hospitality, we had kind of uniform requirements, and I was like, oh, well, this is a breeze. This is nothing. Like, don't complain about what we have to do here. So I think finding, I'm glad for the experiences of working for the small companies, and they definitely have like their pros and cons. But it was another thing that working for Kohler, for me personally, it just was such a benefit. And and kind of going back to something different, I wanted to point out, I worked for Kohler for 2 years before the BRGs were even created. I didn't realize how much I needed something like this in my life. When you got out of the military, you just kind of think, oh, I'm just a civilian now. And then when you start meeting with military personnel again, and you get that fun jargon and that fun banter with other people, you realize just how fulfilling that is, and how much it just kind of helps bring you back to I hate to say the good old days, but that time in your life when you did feel that great sense of purpose and pride.
Absolutely, you speak the same language.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was that process like for you guys to get your BRG and ERGs off the ground?
I wasn't a part of that. The previous leaders were for the initial stages. I joined after the BRG had been created for about a year already. Again, and that was just, they had advertised it. Here at Kohler, we do have a newsletter, of course, and just a weekly way for people to communicate with one another across the whole company. And I had seen different things about it, and at the time I had just like a 2-year-old baby, and I wasn't looking for something else to do in my life. But then someone that I worked with knew I was a veteran, and then they told the leadership at that time, like, hey, contact her. And I actually got a phone call, and they asked me if I wanted to be a part of it. And it was just, again, one of those things that, I didn't realize the void in my life. So the first few meetings were just like, yes, I need this. This is amazing.
But you guys went through COVID too, so you almost had to like hit the reset button, right, and try to get it going again. What was that like?
Yeah, good question. It was like hitting the reset button, just like for everyone. No more. For a long time, all the meetings were via Teams, which brings a different dynamic to the meeting versus meeting in person. And so one thing in the last couple of years that we have really tried to implement is, okay, yes, we do love Teams. It's convenient in our lives. We're not going to get rid of it. Meeting monthly in person just is harder to do for everyone than it was before. So how can we implement something where we're really trying to get people together for a fun activity? So we've implemented just a quarterly lunch where people can get together. We'll maybe have a few topics we talk over, but it's just meant as a more social meeting for people to have that camaraderie again.
Obviously, you guys have, most ERGs that I know have a leader or chairman that's, part of the leadership team inside of the organizations. How important is that for you guys to have someone like Bill, be that leader or chairman of calves within your organization?
Yeah, here at Kohler, we call it an executive sponsor. So we have one executive sponsor, and Bill's going to be kind of the next one as well. The current one, his name is Rick Reitman, and he had experience. He's a veteran himself. He was in both the Army and the Navy, and really, I think of him as our ambassador. He has a direct communication to the top leadership of Kohler, which is so powerful for us. It's powerful for all of the BRGs to have that person that can really relay both the successes and the challenges that we're facing and that we see for the veteran community. Most people are extremely supportive of veterans, of our BRG, so we don't have major hurdles that we have to overcome. But there are still some hurdles that we want to bring to that leadership team of things that they maybe should think of to implement for the company culture or things to be aware of.
What are some of the challenges that ERGs might face that, you could share with the audience and just be like, yeah, this is some of the challenges that we faced, forming our ERG, and this is the challenges we're facing moving forward?
I think forming an ERG, like I said, I admittedly, I didn't join it for a year because I didn't need something else in my life. So I think really emphasizing to people, yes, this is a volunteer organization. You can come and go as you like. And we've certainly seen that with members that have been a part of the organization thus far. Some of them have just, maybe they're in a really busy period in their life right now, and I haven't seen them for a year. But they're still part of the group, and really that's natural for any organization that's volunteers. You have to have grace with people, meet them where they're at, and I think just consistently try to reach out to them to see what they're interested in doing, seeing if there is maybe a passion project that they want to work on, and that other people want to work on.
I think the big thing is everyone knows about it. Like, everyone needs to understand the BRGs and what they're about and getting that word out, especially in such a wide and diverse organization. One of the things right now is, talked about teams is, we're more remote. So I've got people on my recruitment team. Half the recruitment team doesn't live in Wisconsin. So how do we keep the engagement? How to engage those people that are in, Michigan or San Diego or other places or upstate New York? How do I engage them and get them part of the team when we can't actually do that quarter lunches or there? So I think teams is kind of a blessing and a curse sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think you'll get more engagement if, you try to do events during the day, during the work hours? I know everybody has a job to do, right? You got to get that job completed. But in order to get more engagement with your BRGs, do you think that's like a solution, or is that a good or a bad thing?
Yes and no. We've found historically kind of that answer to be yes and no. There's a lot of Kohler associates that don't work in front of a computer all day. They don't even really have an email address. And so reaching out to those associates and letting them know what we do, what we stand for, that's a continual challenge. And those associates are just people, maybe in manufacturing, certain jobs in hospitality, like cooks or housekeepers. They don't have access to that. So how do we reach them? Because that is important to us as well. And how do you inspire them to maybe come to something and meet all of us? I think that's a great question that we continually have to address too. And
I know we kind of talked about this before, but how do you guys measure success for the Veterans Alliance?
I think that success for me personally, I'll talk me personally for the Alliance, and then also broad picture. Broad picture of all of the BRGs is just moving the needle culturally, making people more aware of everything that we do, everything we offer, making you more aware of just something that's important to these other cultures. I think even though I don't attend, I really appreciate learning about maybe things that our Indian BRG is doing or things that our Asian BRG is doing. I think it's very interesting. And I feel like I'm a cheerleader for them on the sideline. I don't feel obligated to attend, just like they don't feel obligated to attend our things, but I know that they're cheerleaders as well. So I think just like broad picture, that's definitely a success. And it gives Kohler associates just that feeling of camaraderie with one another and camaraderie with the company that they work for, that they know helps support them in their kind of passion projects. For our BRG, I think success is just, it's not measured by a number like financials or P&Ls, things like that. It's measured by how can we continuously move forward with things that like Dan and his team are doing, working with a brand new recruiting firm. That's a win. A win is, again, like getting people out of their comfort zone and doing new activities like the golf fundraiser. Those
Absolutely.
are wins too.
Do you want to add anything, Dan?
Yeah, I think for me, it's about community building, a community inside Kohler, easing the transition with people coming into Kohler, and then getting people in the door. I think those three things, especially being the recruitment committee, is how do we get people in there? And I think one of the keys for me is the talk about resume translation. I'm here because of a CAVS member. Scott Uselding, he was the old chair of the recruitment committee. He worked in the same organization that I was hired on, and I was told this afterwards. My boss went to him and said, "Hey, this is a veteran, Scott. Here's his resume. Translate this for me." And he did translation. So I don't know how that played into it, but I know that having someone translate your resume and say, "Hey, this is what this experience this guy is. I think you'd be good in this role," is huge. And another veteran going to my boss say, "Hey, this is what this really means." That was huge in getting me in. And the big part for veterans is getting an interview. If you just get in front of someone, getting past that, looking at my resume. So anytime we can translate a resume or get someone, even network, and get someone a door in front of a hiring manager, in front of someone, and just have a conversation, that's huge. For me, that's what success looks like.
Awesome. I love that. Talk about the recruitment thing. Like, what is Kohler doing as a whole to recruit veterans to the organization?
So I think the key is in our partnerships. One is a organization called Mission Wisconsin, and we like that organization, not just going out, but they're going out where transitioning veterans are. They're going to TAPS, they're going to bases, they're going to talk to the veterans. I mean, Steve has gone to Japan and other bases outside the U.S. and talked to the veterans, and he gets them into Wisconsin. You know, a lot of these veterans, I'm from the Midwest, so I just ordered Wisconsin. But if you're from done in Alabama or South Carolina, you don't know anything about Wisconsin. You couldn't even place it on a map. So being a voice not just for veterans coming in, but being a voice for Wisconsin. Hey, coming to Wisconsin, this place is great. Like, you like to fish? Have you seen the Great Lakes? Like, talk about everything there is great about this area. So getting them into Wisconsin, and they have a whole transition system and transition them out, the whole family. Hey, find a job, find a house, like transitioning out just the veteran and the family. And we think groups like that, what he's doing is awesome. So Mission Wisconsin is one of our key things. We've done some partnership with Vet Jobs. I have some members on my team, 2 of them that are current officers in the National Guard. One's a field grade officer, so making that connection with the Guard units, and we're looking at a couple different things, including the DoD Skill Bridge program. I think those not-for-profit connections really are the key there, because they're the experts in transitioning veterans, and they go out and find them. And how can we say, hey, we think Kohler is a good fit for you, for the veterans you're looking at? So I think it's all those partnerships.
I think Dan has really, I've leaned on him so much in this space because he clearly has passion for it, and he's really just tackled everything with amazing enthusiasm, and it's very important for Kohler and for our VRG.
Is it all veterans on the recruitment committee, or is it just a?
I believe we're all vets. Yeah.
It happens to be.
Yeah, it happens to be all vets.
Yep.
But I'd like to grow the group and get a little more perspectives, and any ideas and stuff. And that's what it is. It's we just kind of bounce ideas over, and some of them is, hey, someone sent me this email. They want to talk about veteran recruitment, and we have a meeting and vet them out, and that's been a lot of it. Just people bouncing stuff off and coming to me, do you think this is a good idea? And then we, have a meet, and that's kind of how Mission Wisconsin. I think they believe they came to us. So
Yeah.
Steve's a great guy, and I love exactly what you said. He not only recruits them to come to Wisconsin, but he also recruits the family. Like, hey, this is what we have to offer. He gets the buy-in from them, because ultimately that's probably more important than the vet getting the job, because if the family doesn't want to be here, it's probably not going to last that long.
yeah, think about in the military veteran, that's the first move. The family has a choice in the matter. Normally the family doesn't have a choice where you're moving. They're going to go to this base. We're going to go over to Fort Bragg, or we're going to go to Washington. The family doesn't have a choice. This is the first move the family can say, hey, we're doing this as a family. So I think that's a really big step.
Absolutely. Do you have any success stories like so far in that journey?
We're kind of getting started, but we're starting to see resumes and vet some people. We got one through here, and sometimes I reach out and say, hey, what are you looking for?
Coach them
Yeah,
a little bit.
And maybe Kohler isn't the best for you, but this is how you tailor your resume. Like, what do you really? Sometimes I have to ask people, what do you really want to do? And they tell me this. Well, this is not what the resume says. So,
So what do you think the biggest benefits are for a veteran to be a part of CAVS outside of the camaraderie? Because we all know that's super important for us as veterans, because we speak the same language. We might be going through the same struggles. But how important has it been for you two to be a part of that organization, and why should other employees consider, joining up with you?
I think for me, like getting started day one is the same person who got my resume, Scott. He's like, hey, if you're at CAVS, we have this group. We're going to get you, kind of the first day I was here. And I learned about Kohler through the CAVS and meeting all these different people in business groups. And, I don't really do anything with hospitality, but I've learned about how hospitality operates, and, our energy group, how do they operate? One of the people on our recruitment team is a manager of engineering on the energy side. So learning all the different pieces, learning Kohler through the kind of veterans and networking. So for me, it was a great opportunity to learn Kohler and then ease the transition, answer any questions. I feel like I had a group of people I could ask if I had questions. being new to an organization, being new to a state.
Yeah, absolutely. And just again, within cabs, there's just a wide range of people in their stage of their career, you know, from young to more mature, you know, someone like Bill and our executive sponsor Rick Reitman, again, they're big leaders in the company, and to have access to someone like them and just to even just pick their brain about maybe something you're struggling with, or just to watch their leadership too, can be so helpful for anyone that it goes back to networking, but just really getting to know people, I think, is a huge benefit of any BRG.
So, like with the calves thing too, it's not something that the company advertises on the website or anything like that, that there is calves. It's like more of an internal thing, right? But I think the coaching thing that you just mentioned is extremely important, because if there's a person that's from this area and they would really like to work with Kohler, you use the tool LinkedIn, and I think that's probably one of the most powerful tools out there. But why is it important for a veteran to, you know, get themselves on LinkedIn and do the things that they need to do to be successful? And when do you recommend that they get on LinkedIn?
I mean, they say transition almost a year out, and I think you can do it, you know, up to a year, 6 months. I don't think you do it that early. At least building one and looking at what other vets have built, and, you know, don't reinvent the wheel. You know, looking at building that networking and just reaching out to people and having the conversations and understanding and using that as a network tool. But really, you know, starting a year out, what do I want to do? What am I good at? You know, what part of the military? And that was for me, is I liked doing the maintenance, and I liked working with my maintenance teams in the military. That was, you know, one of my favorite jobs. So it's like this is what I like to do in the military. These are the transferable skills. And shockingly, there was something at Kohler that matched. My first job at Kohler I didn't get. Applied for a bunch of jobs when I got to Wisconsin, didn't get. But this job was perfect for what I want to do, my skill set, and it was available. It's even if the first time you target a company it doesn't work, getting to know the recruiters, and they said, hey, we really liked you. This isn't the right job for you, but hey, maybe you should apply for some other jobs. And they pointed me in the right direction. So I think that's huge.
Well, you both mentioned resume problems, right? Resume troubles when you first started. What changes did you make, and how did you make those changes? Did you find somebody to help you tailor it? Did you pay somebody to help you tailor it? Or like, how did you go through that process?
For me personally, I didn't do any of those things. I ended up going to school and getting a degree in HR, and just through that, I really learned how to think like an HR recruiter, manager, how to word things. And really, if you just Google, there's lots of different articles on ways to word things in your resume, to tailor it to the job description of the job that you want. Things like that are really good tips.
So I originally wrote my resume. I went through an organization called 4Block, kind of built my resume through there. And then I went through VetJobs there, kind of helped me write it. So it was kind of a matter of writing it and then refining it to each role, and talking to people and each person that maybe you should do this, and kind of, I think writing a resume is so daunting, but if you look at it, you just get something down on paper and you just keep refining it of what you want to do. And I think the big thing is when you're looking at a job, does this experience on the resume match what it is? I saw one the other day, they had a big section about, you know, secret clearance and blah, blah, blah. Like, we don't need you've just wasted the space, right? Space on a resume is so valuable. You know, for Kohler, you should take that out and add something that corresponds. You know, if you're applying for a manufacturing job or something like that, maybe you shouldn't put, you know, my time spent in the doing HR paperwork or admin in the military, or, you know, the unit prevention leader. You know, if I'm going to be a leader in manufacturing, don't put unit prevention leader. That might not, you know. So it's because in the military we think of skill sets, right? Certs and skill sets. You know, the I Love Me book that everyone had with all your certs and all your cool schools. That doesn't really, I think that in civilian it's more accomplishments. Think of accomplishments, not skill sets. I was a unit movement officer for this many people. We did this many convoys. I was the head of maintenance for F-16s, or, you know, a head of maintenance on an aircraft carrier, or I ran this project. We did this field training exercise and with this many people. Think of it as accomplishments, because accomplishments to understand, I work in the skilled trades. People are always looking at, we hired a guy in the last year who did maintenance on an aircraft carrier. Do maintenance on an aircraft carrier, you can do maintenance on in cast iron and maintenance. So those accomplishments are really key. Whereas some of those schools, my Pathfinder school, my air assault school, no one knows what that is. That doesn't really do, but the accomplishments that I did transfer easier than I think the certs of the schools do.
And storytelling too. I think teaching people to storytell about themselves. When you were mentioning, oh, I was a mechanic on F-16, or I led, XYZ convoys. Like, what does that mean? Let's storytell about that. All the planning and say how you're detail oriented and things like that.
So I always wondered about this because, HR, your company as big as Kohler, probably gets, 1,000 resumes a day for jobs. I don't even know. I can't even put a number on it, but I'm sure it's high. Do they look through all those? Do you have like AI that detects if it has veteran on it or the military background and stuff like that? Or is there like an A and a B pile right away that HR person or recruitment person knows? Is this somebody that we want to interview, or no, they don't meet the requirements just based on a few lines that I just read that don't apply to the job?
So I think that's why it's important to networking. I think they say you have 90 seconds an HR person looks at it. And I think Kohler, someone does look at it. But if that person doesn't understand, like, what does Pathfinder mean or air assault mean, or I went to, whatever school, unit movement officer, they don't know what that means. Mm-hmm. So they're going to be like, that doesn't apply here. Well, it might if you break it down into pieces they can understand. And that's why talking to someone in that industry, I'll give you a quick story. My wife was applying for a company. She really wanted to work there, was targeting to go back to the federal government, and finally got in to see a hiring manager by networking. The same day, though, the hiring manager offered her a job. She got another job, and she went with that one. But she was targeting so long. And it was just that finally got that resume to the right person. Like, he literally offered her a job right on the spot. After a year of applying with the same resume and getting kickback, you don't have the experience, got into someone who actually understands and said, you'd be perfect for this job. She's like, I've already accepted someplace else So getting that person past that understands what the resume actually says, and that's why the networking is so important. You got to have someone look at the resume and say, hey, I work in this industry. No one's going to know what this means. Mm-hmm. This is how you write this.
Do you recommend a cover letter? Does that help?
I'm thinking if I wrote a cover letter.
I know I did in the past, but that I don't know if they're still used now, honestly.
I don't know either.
Because if they are, it's another way to tell your story,
mm-hmm.
And to really emphasize your strengths.
I think of LinkedIn, and someone taught me this really early. LinkedIn is a long form of your resume. Yeah. You don't put everything on the resume, but you put everything on LinkedIn. So it's a long form of that, and it's an expanded version of it. We have almost unlimited space to look at it. Oh, this guy looks interesting. I've been told the recruiters, they look at, okay, I think you're, all right, well, and then it gives you the full story and the full kind of background. So I think matching the LinkedIn and the resume, think of them as two separate tools, but they kind of have to work together. And then I think, and I've seen some really good resumes, and I looked at LinkedIn, I'm like, oh, this guy's not ready for it. This guy or gal's not ready for transition. What is this picture? They're flexing in the picture. I've seen some really weird one, and I call someone a resume that came across, and I'm like, you know what? You need help with this LinkedIn. I called him and I said, and he's very thankful. I said, you need some help here, because they're going to look at it, and what you're telling me, that what the resume says and what the link says is completely different. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, I built a LinkedIn long ago. I haven't touched it in a couple of years. I'm like, you need to touch it now. So that should match, and they should be kind of a professional thing. Think of an extension of your resume.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. The networking thing, I mean, that's how I got my last two jobs. Literally didn't even give my resume. It was more of, hey, this is what I do. This is how I do it. We had a few meetings, and I got hired. As you get that experience, though, without that experience, you're dead in the water. But great point. Transitioning a little bit here, if I'm a veteran-owned business, And I know we kind of talked about this before, but how do you guys have like a supplier diversity program or anything like that where a veteran-owned business can come in and do business with Kohler? And how do they do that?
We definitely do have a supplier diversity program, and it is something that they've been emphasizing more and more over the last 2 years, as far as I know.
So we do. We have a director who runs that program. I think the big thing is to get your business certified. There's a couple different organizations that we use to certify that because we can't check everything. So I think the big thing is get yourself on the list, get certified. Wisconsin Veteran Chamber of Commerce is one key organization, but get yourself on a list that says I'm a veteran owned, because they do all the background work and all the stuff. And because we went through that process with our suppliers, and I know some suppliers were diverse that met the qualifications, but they weren't on the list and they weren't being counted. And I called some people like, you guys gotta get yourself on a list. Like we're gonna continue to do business. We like doing business with you, but let's count that as diverse because you're a diverse supplier. So
Absolutely.
I think that's a big thing. Getting yourself on a list and registered in Wisconsin or nationally is big, and then those databases are searchable. And I know the person Audrey who does that looks through there and we can find, hey, I'm looking for a diverse supplier in this. All right, here's this guy he's right down the road. So I think that's kind of the first step.
What kind of services or products do you guys look for from that standpoint? Do you know of any?
I think they're looking for kind of all categories, anything they look at from, and it's total spend. So we have a steel supplier, I know diverse, and so it's a wide range. It's, the amount of stuff we buy, from PPE to safety glasses to services, the people that do our PMs on our tools and come in, the cleaning crew that comes in. So we hire a large amount, so the possibilities are almost endless.
That's awesome. So if I'm a veteran and I want a job or position here at Kohler, because I love the company, how do I do that? What's the best way for me to reach out to you guys?
There's a couple different ways. I think the best way is reaching out to Mission Wisconsin, because it's not just you that's transitioning. Your family. It's a whole change. And I think that treating that entirety as a whole change and not just I'm getting a new job, because it's much more than that, I think is big. But he can help vet. He can help with resume. He can help guide you. I think having a support team is helpful. You can always reach out to any of us on LinkedIn. We're always willing to help someone that wants the help and looking for ask questions.
I know there was someone that Steve with Mission Wisconsin was talking to that was interested in going to hospitality, and I had a specific call with that person and talked to him extensively about just what that looks like, because his current job in the military is not hospitality, so he wanted to do something very different. And so when Steve asked me to do that, I was just like, yeah, absolutely, I'm happy to share the knowledge and even share like tips for what you want to do getting into that specific field. So again, going back to just how veterans really are wired to help others, and specifically help other veterans.
Absolutely. And I really do appreciate both your time today. This has been super cool here at the Kohler Studios. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Absolutely.
What's up, fellow vets? If you got some value from this video, you might want to check out one of these videos over here. And we'll see you in the next video.